You can explain exactly why they struggle with emotional regulation. You've read about their childhood trauma. You know their triggers, their defense mechanisms, their attachment wounds better than they do. And you tell yourself, I'm not codependent. I'm just emotionally intelligent and empathetic.
But here's what smart people miss. Understanding someone's psychology and managing someone's psychology are two completely different things. And if you're spending more energy managing their emotions than they are, if you're researching their patterns while they're doing nothing to change them, if you feel responsible for their healing, that's not empathy. That's codependency.
Today, we're breaking down the codependency red flags that intelligent, compassionate people miss because you've reframed caretaking as caring. And we're showing you how to tell the difference between healthy support and losing yourself, but only if both people are willing to do the work.
Because you can't fix codependency alone. It takes two people to create the dynamic, and it takes two people to heal it.
This video was inspired by Diana's comment. She wrote, I would really like to see a video about attachment that is codependent coming from an alcoholic father and also becoming anxious, meeting an avoidant. I was trying hard to figure out when I have anxious behavior or my need of control is coming from codependency.
Diana, this is for you and everyone else trying to untangle where anxious attachment ends and codependency begins, especially when you grew up having to manage someone else's emotions to survive.
Before we do that, for those of you new here, I'm Tarina Terry.
And I'm Joel Terry. And this is Da Vinci. We're both licensed therapists. I bring the science.
And I bring the heart. Don't forget to subscribe. It's free. And leave a comment below. I love connecting with you all in the comments. And as with Diana's comment, it informs what videos we make for you.
Today, we're exploring how smart people confuse codependency with compassion and why growing up in a chaotic home creates patterns that look a lot like love but feel exhausting. Let's start with the confusion Diana named so perfectly. How do you know if what you're experiencing is anxious attachment or codependency? Because for people who grew up with an alcoholic parent or any chaotic, unpredictable caregiving, you often develop both.
Here's the distinction that helps, though there's significant overlap. Anxious attachment asks, am I loved? Will they leave me? The core fear is abandonment. The focus is on securing the relationship, on being chosen, on not being left. Codependency, on the other hand, asks, can I manage their emotions and behavior so I feel safe? The core fear is chaos and loss of control. The focus is on stabilizing the other person so your environment feels safe and predictable.
And here's why smart people growing up in homes with addiction or emotional instability develop both. Love was unpredictable, which creates anxious attachment. But you also learn that your safety depended on managing someone else's emotional state, reading the room, anticipating needs, controlling variables. That's where codependency takes root.
So when you're an anxious, codependent person dating an avoidant partner, you're getting hit with a double activation. Your anxious attachment is screaming, don't leave me, while your codependent patterns are screaming, let me fix this so I can feel safe.
And smart people, you're incredibly good at making both of these sound reasonable. You call your anxious attachment wanting connection, and your codependency being supportive. Neither sounds problematic when you phrase it that way.
But here's the reality. Anxious attachment wants connection. Codependency needs control disguised as care. And when you can't tell the difference, you end up in relationships where you're doing all the emotional labor and calling it love.
Both people need to see this clearly. If you're the anxious codependent partner, you need to recognize when you've crossed from wanting connection to needing to manage outcomes. And if you're the avoidant partner, you need to recognize when you're allowing someone to overfunction for you instead of doing your own work.
Let's get specific about what codependency actually looks like when smart people are doing it, because you've gotten really, really skilled at reframing it.
Red flag number 1, I can help them heal. You've appointed yourself their unpaid therapist. You're reading books about their issues, sending them articles, creating healing plans for them.
Your smart brain says, I'm just educating myself to be a better partner. But here's the question. Are they asking for this help? Are they implementing anything you're suggesting? Or are you doing their healing work for them while they remain passive?
Because there's a difference between I'm learning about avoidant attachment so I can understand my partner better, and I'm learning about avoidant attachment so I can fix my partner. The first is empathy. The second is codependency.
Red flag number 2. They just need the right support. You believe that if you just love them correctly, consistently, patiently enough, they'll heal and the relationship will work.
This is classic adult children of alcoholics, also known as ACOA, thinking. You grew up believing that if you could just be good enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, maybe your parent wouldn't drink or rage or withdraw. So now as an adult, you bring that same magical thinking to relationships. If I do everything right, they'll change.
But love is not a behavioral modification program. You are not a variable in someone else's healing equation. Their growth is their responsibility, not your project.
And both partners need to understand this. If you're allowing someone to make your healing their responsibility, you're not being vulnerable, you're being passive. And if you're taking responsibility for someone else's healing, you're not being loving, you're avoiding your own work.
Red flag number 3. I understand why they do this. You can write dissertations explaining their behavior, their childhood wounds, their defense mechanisms, and their triggers. And because you understand it so well, you think you should accept it.
Smart people are exceptional at this. You use your intelligence to create complex psychological frameworks that explain exactly why your partner is the way they are. And then you use that framework as permission to stay in a dynamic that hurts you.
But understanding why someone hurts you doesn't mean they get to keep hurting you. Compassion for their wounds doesn't mean endless tolerance for their behavior.
Here's the distinction. Empathy says, I understand this is hard for you, and I'm here to support your active healing work. Codependency says, I understand this is hard for you, so I'll accept whatever you give me and call it enough.
Red flag number 4. You feel responsible for their emotional state. When they're upset, you can't rest until you've fixed it. Their mood determines your mood. You're constantly scanning their emotional temperature and adjusting your behavior accordingly.
This is straight from the ACOA playbook, emotional hypervigilance. You learned as a child that your job was to manage the emotional climate of your home. Now as an adult, you're doing the same thing in relationships.
Your smart brain calls this being attuned or emotionally responsive. But healthy attunement means noticing when your partner is struggling and offering support. Codependent hypervigilance means making their feelings your responsibility to manage.
And here's what both partners need to face. If you're managing your partner's emotions for them, you're actually preventing them from developing their own emotional regulation. You're not helping, you're enabling their underdevelopment.
Red flag number 5. Your needs always come last. You can articulate exactly what they need, what would help them, what they're going through. But if someone asked you what you need right now, you'd struggle to answer.
Smart codependent people become experts in other people's psychology and forget to develop their expertise in their own. You can identify their attachment style, but can't name your own feelings. You know their triggers, but ignore your boundaries.
Because codependency isn't actually about the other person. It's about using their needs as a distraction from your own. As long as you're focused on fixing them, you don't have to face what's broken in you. So why do intelligent, self-aware people look at these patterns and think, but I'm just being a good partner?
Let's break it down. First, if you grew up in a home where you had to manage someone else's emotions to stay safe, codependency literally feels like love to you. Caretaking, hypervigilance, emotional management, these weren't optional skills. They were survival strategies.
So when you meet someone who needs caretaking, your nervous system goes, oh, I know this dance. This is intimacy. It's not, but it's familiar. And we often confuse familiar with right.
Second, smart people are really good at creating hierarchies of needs. You tell yourself, my needs aren't as important right now because they're going through something harder. Or I'm more emotionally developed, so I should be able to handle more.
But this is just sophisticated self-abandonment. You're using your intelligence to justify why your needs don't matter as much as theirs. And over time, you start to believe it.
Here's the truth both partners need to hear. In a healthy relationship, both people's needs matter equally. Not identically, you might need different things at different times, but equally in importance. If one person is consistently sacrificing while the other consistently receives, that's not partnership. That's a parent-child dynamic.
Third, smart people often have a deep need to be needed. Maybe you didn't get as much attention as a child unless you were being helpful. Maybe the only time you felt valuable was when you were solving problems or taking care of others.
So now as an adult, you seek out people who need you. You're drawn to avoidant partners not despite their emotional unavailability, but because of it. They give you a project, a purpose, a way to feel worthy.
But your worth isn't determined by your usefulness. You don't have to earn love through caretaking. You're allowed to be in a relationship where you receive as much as you give.
And both people need to examine this. If you need to be needed, you'll be drawn to people who won't do their own work. And if you're comfortable with being rescued, you'll seek out people who need to save someone.
All right, so how do you actually break codependent patterns when they feel like love? This requires both awareness and action.
First, you need to start tracking your behavior objectively. For 1 week, notice every time you explain someone else's behavior to them. Take responsibility for someone else's emotional state. Do emotional labor they should be doing themselves. Put their needs ahead of yours automatically without discussion, or feel responsible for their healing or growth.
Smart people, you're good at data. Track it like you would track anything else, because what you'll probably see is a pattern of overfunctioning while they underfunction.
This is where our Inner Circle growth members get access to the Codependency versus Empathy worksheet that we created specifically for this video. It helps you distinguish between healthy support and codependent caretaking, with specific questions to identify where you're crossing the line. And if you're not a channel member yet and this sounds like deeper work you'd like to do, click the join button below and select the Tier 2 membership.
Second, you need to develop what we call differentiation. The ability to be close to someone while maintaining your own sense of self, to care about their feelings without making their feelings your responsibility.
Practically, this means you can notice they're upset without immediately trying to fix it. You can offer support without taking over. You can have empathy for their struggles without solving their problems. And you can maintain your boundaries even when they're dysregulated.
This is hard for people with ACOA backgrounds because you learned that love means merging, managing, absorbing. So differentiation feels like abandonment or coldness. But it's actually what makes real intimacy possible.
Because you can't have genuine connection with someone if you're busy managing them. Real intimacy happens between two whole people, not between a caretaker and a patient.
Third, you need to apply the timeline test we've been using in this series. If you've identified codependent patterns and you've named them, either to yourself or your partner, give it 3 months.
What you're looking for isn't perfection. You're looking for both people actively working on the dynamic. That means you're practicing stepping back from caretaking, they're practicing stepping up to their own emotional work. You're both in therapy or actively learning, and the balance is starting to shift, even incrementally.
If 3 months pass and you're still the only one doing the work of changing the dynamic, that's your answer. They're comfortable with the codependent arrangement, and you staying means you are too.
Both people have to want to change this. If only one person is working on it, the dynamic will stay the same or get worse. Let's talk about the neuroscience of why codependency feels like love, especially for people who grew up in chaotic homes. Research on adult children of alcoholics shows that children in unpredictable environments develop hyperactive threat detection systems. Your brain learned to constantly scan for danger, to read subtle emotional cues, to anticipate others' needs before they're expressed. This isn't a personality trait. It's a survival adaptation. When you become an adult, this hypervigilance doesn't just turn off. Your nervous system is still wired to monitor others' emotional states as a safety mechanism. So when you meet someone who's emotionally dysregulated, like an avoidant partner in deactivation, your system recognizes this as familiar and goes into caretaking mode automatically. Here's what's happening neurologically. When you successfully manage someone else's emotional state, your brain releases dopamine, the reward chemical. You feel like you've restored safety, prevented crisis, done your job. This creates a neurological reinforcement loop. Caretaking leads to dopamine, which leads to feeling valuable, which leads right back to more caretaking. But there's a cost. While you're hyper-focused on someone else's nervous system, you're completely disconnected from your own. Research on codependency shows decreased interoceptive awareness, the ability to sense your own internal states. You literally lose access to your own feelings, needs, and boundaries because all of your neurological resources are devoted to monitoring someone else. This is why codependency is so hard to break. It's not just a psychological pattern, it's a neurological habit. You're trying to override a survival system that's been reinforced for decades. The intervention requires actively retraining your nervous system to prioritize your own internal states over others' emotional climates. Therapy approaches like somatic experiencing, EMDR, and internal family systems specifically target these patterns by helping you develop new neural pathways. And here's what both partners need to understand. If you're the codependent partner, your hypervigilance is exhausting for you. If you're the avoidant partner benefiting from this caretaking, you're not being loved. You're being managed. Neither of you is having a real relationship.
So let's get to the heart of it. Diana, you asked when your behavior is anxious attachment versus codependency. Here's the answer. If you're more focused on managing them than connecting with them, it's codependency. If you're watching this video because you've recognized in yourself these patterns, I need you to understand something. You learned to be this way. It wasn't your fault. But once you understand this, staying this way is your choice. Growing up in a chaotic home taught you that your value came from your usefulness, that love meant anticipating needs, absorbing emotions, and fixing problems. That if you could just be helpful enough, perceptive enough, selfless enough, maybe you'd be safe. Maybe you'd be loved. But here's what nobody told you then. So I'm telling you now, you were always worthy of love, even when you weren't fixing anything. You didn't have to earn it through caretaking. You didn't have to manage someone else's emotions to deserve attention. You were enough, just as you were. You just didn't have parents who could show you that. So now as an adult, you're still trying to earn love through usefulness. You're still trying to make yourself indispensable so people won't leave. You're still proving your worth by being the strong one, the understanding one, the one who never asks for too much. And I know why you do it. I know it feels safer to be needed than to be wanted. Because if someone needs you, they'll stay. But if they just want you, they might change their mind. But here's what codependency costs you. You never get to find out if someone would choose you just for you because you're too busy making yourself useful to see if they'd love you anyway. You deserve a relationship where you're not the therapist, the parent, or the emotional manager. You deserve someone who shows up for their own healing, who takes responsibility for their own growth, and who doesn't need you to be smaller so they can stay comfortable. And both of you need to face this honestly. If you're the codependent partner, your caretaking is keeping your partner from growing. You're not helping, you're enabling. And if you're the partner being caretaken, accepting this dynamic is not love, it's using someone. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to want someone to meet you halfway. You're allowed to stop managing and start living. Your empathy is a gift, but it's being wasted on someone who won't do their own work. And until you reclaim it, until you direct some of that compassion toward yourself, nothing changes. You weren't meant to carry someone else's emotional life. You were meant to share one with them. There is a difference.
Next up in the series, we're covering why smart people stay too long, the sunk cost fallacy in love. Because intelligence makes you really good at calculating investment and really bad at cutting your losses.
If you haven't yet signed up for our free weekly emails, you're missing out. We share relationship insights that don't make it into videos. Sign up using the link in the description box below, and you'll receive those emails directly to your inbox every Wednesday. Think of it as your midweek boost between our Monday and Friday videos.
Subscribe and take care of your heart.
And remember, you're not alone. We're all in this
Together.